inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildman. The show is hosted each week by myself and Rick Green. And to be more proper, Rick Green and I, we host the show each week, and we're glad to be with you each day of the week. We've got a re-air, best of, if you will, over the weekend as well, so you'll be able to hear the program on the weekend. If you want to subscribe to the show, well, you can, and we upload the program in the form of a podcast each and every day. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just type in the name of the program. You'll find the show page, click the subscribe button or the follow button, and you can have the program queued up in your library each and every day for your consumption. And it's the podcast is convenient, it's accessible, and you can listen to the program at your timing when you choose. And if you want to break it up into segments, that's fine too. Before we jump into our scripture of the week, let me remind you, and we'll talk more about this in the next segment, but we do have our Bibles for Babies campaign going on this week. And in essence, what we're doing here is we're partnering with a local pregnancy resource center, pregnancy clinic in North Mississippi, to provide Bibles for mothers that come in expecting. And so we're giving away free Bibles in partnership with a North Mississippi Pregnancy Resource Center. We're giving away free Bibles for the mom, and of course, with the hopes of it being passed down to the baby. So that's our Bibles for Babies campaign, and we'll have Ann Cockrell here on shortly to tell us more about that. All the information you need is over at afr.net on the homepage, afr.net right there on the home page. You'll see the campaign. You click Learn More, and you can donate. $10 provides a Bible for a mother and a child. That's our Bibles for Babies campaign. Proverbs chapter 23 is where we are this week. And looking at verse 4 and 5, do not weary yourself to gain wealth. Cease from your consideration of it. When you set your eyes on it, it is gone. For wealth certainly makes itself wings like an eagle that flies towards the heavens. So what we can take away from this is that we don't need to be consumed with, we don't need to grow weary in pursuing financial gain and pursuing wealth, because just as quickly as we earn it, it vanishes away. And we need to have a good work ethic. We need to be good stewards. We need to be good planners. There's nothing wrong with gaining wealth, with gaining money, with gaining assets, but we don't need to weary ourselves with it. We don't need to be consumed with it. It needs to take a proper place as priority-wise in our life according to Scripture. That's Proverbs chapter 23, verses 4 and 5. All right, what I want to talk about this segment is what I alluded to on Wednesday of this week when the breaking news was out over the school shooting in Minnesota. Very tragic shooting. 2 children lost their lives at this Catholic school. Over a dozen more injured. And it's the shooting was committed by a male who a young man who was allegedly transgender or struggling with gender dysphoria. And this, unlike other school shootings, there's a lot of information out there on this shooter because the Trump administration and the FBI, they're operating under a maximum transparency administration, and they're not trying to cover things up and hide things for political purposes. So the manifesto, the images of the YouTube videos of the manifesto, the notebook, images of the firearms, all of this is out there now. We've got it all. So there's no, conspiracy theories percolating about, what happened here, what was the motivation. Look, here's what's abundantly clear based on the evidence today. This young man was severely disturbed, had been catered into and bought into himself the lie of transgenderism, and that you can change your gender and you can identify as whatever you want to identify as. There's evidence that there was, hormones involved. Not sure if there was a surgery that went along with it. But this young man was just bought into this left-wing insanity of gender dysphoria, transgenderism, and the entire deviancy movement that goes along with it. And so these type shootings are actually becoming pretty common. The transgender ideology has become so toxic, so evil, so pervasive that there's an entire kind of community, if you will, for lack of a better word, that's basically full of radicalized transgenders, radicalized people, boys and girls, men and women that have bought into this lie of transgenderism, and they've become radicalized to such an extent that they're carrying out mass shootings. They're getting in these cult-like groups, creating these private chat boards, and they talk about killing people and how it's their way or the highway. And it's a very cult-like mentality that has been brought to you by the LGBTQ agenda. And I want to play this clip while we have time. Jesse Watters does about a 5-minute monologue, and I tried to figure out how I can cut this up, how I can piecemeal it to not eat up 4 or 5 minutes of the program. But look, the whole thing is a slam dunk. This is Jesse Watters on his monologue this week following the school shooting in Minneapolis, talking about the toxicity that is transgenderism. Clip 3.
Suicidal transgender who hates Trump's Christians and Jews shoots up kids at a Catholic school, and the media wants to take away your handgun. So how are we supposed to protect ourselves from trans shooters? The media is bad at pattern recognition. We aren't. Just 2 years ago, another trans 20-something walked into a Christian school in Nashville with a rifle and shot 3 kids and 3 adults. They buried the manifesto and locked down the case. We've seen trans shootings in Colorado and in Maryland. They even shot up an ICE facility in Texas. And it seems like half of Antifa's trans. A couple of they-thems just got popped for firebombing Teslas. The mayor of Minneapolis says, you can't say that.
Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
I don't hate anyone who thinks they're trans. I feel sorry for them. But statistically, the trans population has been prone to violence. That's not villainizing, that's reality. And if you can't recognize reality, you're in danger. We love the American people, especially American children. And if they're troubled and believe they're somehow a girl trapped in a boy's body, we want to get them help. We don't want to give them hormones and operate on them. Society shouldn't be trying to produce more trans kids. We shouldn't be encouraging an emotional disorder or whatever this is. And doctors should stop profiting from it. Great Britain ended child sex change surgeries. They said it's barbaric, and they're right. And politicians should stop elevating the trans issue like it's the civil rights struggle of the 21st century. You see it all over Minneapolis.
Minneapolis will continue to be a safe haven for our trans community.
For being a safe haven for transgender individuals.
We have sued them for gender-affirming care. Yes, we are not going to scapegoat our transgender community.
When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them.
So when your 9-year-old tells you he's a horse, do you let him sleep out in the barn and eat hay? What are we doing here? Just a few years ago, the psychiatric community classified transgenderism as a mental illness. Then doctors went woke and removed it as a condition, and now millions of young Americans are identifying themselves as trans and getting high fives. When someone has an illness, we should treat it instead of affirm it. We don't celebrate schizophrenia. We don't encourage depression. Teenagers are confused. Sometimes these things are just a phase. And if they're not, all right, then a grown man can wear a dress. If he wants to do that in America, he has that right. We're a pretty darn tolerant society. But the left's weaponizing trans kids and turning them into culture warriors. And they've been turned loose against the church, schools, and Trump. You see it, I see it. The trans Klan has a militant wing, and it's out for blood.
Yep.
They're taking lives, defiling churches, and freaking everybody out. And some politicians are doing more to protect shooters like Westman than soft targets like schools. In 2023, private schools in Minnesota begged Governor Walz to fund more school safety. They told him it was an urgent and critical need. Minnesota had an $18 billion budget surplus, but the governor didn't do it. Instead, he turned Minnesota into a trans sanctuary. And his attorney general, Keith Ellison, sued Trump so they can keep castrating little boys.
Yep.
Tim Walz failed. Our leaders keep failing us. They failed us during COVID, on trade, on immigration. They say they care about kids, but they locked them down and oversaw an obesity and chronic disease epidemic. And now there's a growing trans epidemic, and they won't even admit it. Just like crime. They created a crisis and then lie about it and blame you for not being compassionate. But their fake compassion is getting people killed.
A lot of truth there.
So spot on. So good.
Bobby, this is a fight of good versus evil.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
And notice I didn't say a fight of perfect versus evil.
Yeah.
Because we're all fallen.
Amen.
And there's no quote conservative movement or the Republican Party. That's not what I'm talking about here. And there are people that view this issue correct and biblically that disagree on other parts of scriptural teachings. So this is not a perfect versus evil battle, although God Himself is perfect. But I'm talking about on this earthly side of things. This is a good versus evil, a generally good versus evil battle. And when you look, and this is for adults only, but when you, as far as what I'm about to recommend, but anybody who has the stomach to look at the manifesto, to watch the video of this young man, you cannot walk away from this denying the fact that evil exists in this world. I don't care what your faith background is. I don't care whether you're agnostic, whatever. The hard reality, folks, is that God is real, Satan is real, evil exists in the heart of man, and the only person and the only thing that can tame the evil in man's heart is God and the Holy Spirit. And Bobby, when you look at this, I'm sure you've seen glimpses of this.
Yep.
This shooter in his notebook basically had one of the pages was a interaction with what was depicted to be the devil, where he's basically petitioning the devil to free him of this spell that he's in.
Right.
And the devil says...
Like the devil's going to do that.
Yeah, and the devil says, no, kill yourself.
No, he's just direly disturbed. It's really, really, really sad.
It is.
It really is.
Folks, these are our kids. This isn't a 40-year-old disturbed man. These are kids. These are young people that are falling victim to this wickedness. Because our culture and our entertainment and our leaders and then some of our parents have thought that this sexual confusion is somehow acceptable. It's not, folks. One deviancy leads to another, to another, to another, and now people are experiencing mass evil.
At the Core podcast are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to The Core here on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildman. Glad to have you with us on this Friday edition. Well, as promised, I talked a little bit about Bibles for Babies campaign that we have going on this week in the first segment, and we have in studio with us Ann Cockrell, one of the hosts of Hannah's Heart, and also heading up this project that we're doing to provide moms and babies with a free Bible when they visit one of our local pregnancy clinics. Ann, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a little while. I think I've had you and Kendra on a couple times to talk about various things. Before we talk about the project, tell me about the radio program that's aired on the weekends, right?
Yes, we are on the weekends, and I think actually on Tuesdays now, Tuesday afternoons. Every now and then they pop us in there.
Cool.
But Hannah's Heart started that because of me and Will, my husband, walking through infertility and miscarriage, and you walked through that with us. We were friends all during that time. And so you offered me a job here at AFA. And so I'm working here in donor support, and I got to, talk to our listeners and supporters doing that. But while I was here and listened to a lot of the programs, we talk about some tough stuff here at AFA,
pretty
right?
heavy stuff. Well, we've been talking about it this show.
Right. And so as I got to know AFA more and the topics that you guys weren't afraid to talk about, it was just like, I feel like, infertility is actually a really big subject now, and a lot of people
statistically it's a pretty broad problem, widespread problem.
Right. It's 1 in 8 couples who struggle with infertility, and then it's actually grown now, but 1 in 3 pregnancies that end in miscarriage.
Wow.
And that's grown since this show started. But anyway, I went to leadership about the idea of a show covering infertility and miscarriage, and y'all were like, well, come back with some notes and, you take this on. And I was like, oh, no.
We totally put the ball back in your court.
I was like, no, I don't know anything about radio.
That's what we do.
Answer the phone.
If people come with a good idea, they got to own it.
And
so you owned it.
Y'all made me do that. And so here I am behind a microphone, and that was never the plan.
Yep.
But anyway, so that's where Hannah's Heart came from. Kendra and I met through working at AFA, and infertility is part of her story as well. And so we're both very passionate about it. We both now have children of our own through adoption and fertility treatments and just the good old-fashioned way. But anyway, it is still very heavy on our hearts, and we want to be there with couples as they walk through infertility and IVF and miscarriage and child loss. And so we hope we can do that through Hannah's Heart.
Yeah, I think this show's been a blessing for many reasons. One of the reasons, just for me personally, is that there is biblical teachings and morals to the whole process of infertility, because I didn't really realize how kind of Wild West it was as far as the technology. But I mean, last year, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, but when the Alabama Supreme Court made the ruling on in vitro fertilization, a lot of people were just getting caught up to speed on what even is IVF.
Right.
And so you guys were able to provide a lot of insight on that. But there is some pretty big moral implications to the infertility industry, right? I mean, there's some good ways to go about it and then some bad ways to go about it, right?
And I did not know a lot. So at the end of our story, going through treatments, we were told you will not have children unless you proceed with IVF. And Will and I didn't know really why at the time, but both of us were just like, that's just not something that we can afford to do right now, because we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah. And our conviction at that time was just like, we know that there's thousands of kids out there already that need homes. Right. And so if we were going to put those thousands of dollars somewhere, we wanted that to be for a child that already was here.
And you were probably, I'm not going to say like really early on in marriage, but you weren't like 10 or 15 years in, right?
Correct.
I mean, this was relatively in the earlier process of marriage and family. And so I think that probably made it something where you guys weren't just urgent to move on to the next option, right?
I think we had been married, like 5 years, a little
Yeah.
over 5 years at the time. Yeah, but see, at the time, Walker, it felt like a long time because
Sure,
it
of
was like some of our friends were on to the
Having
second
children.
baby, you
Yeah.
know. But at the time, we had 3 kiddos in our home through foster care, and the infant that we had in our home at that time is Mark now, who we adopted when he was a little over 2.
Yep.
And so we knew at that time, when we were told that, you know, hard news, they were in our home. And so that is just what we agreed to do, was to give all of our time and energy to those kids that we had in our home, even though they were not legally or ours in any way other than the way that we loved them.
Sure.
And so, anyway, that was in February when I was told that. And then in May, I was pregnant with Jane.
Yep.
And so we still don't understand that. I remember being so confused, like, why, God? I just struggled with infertility for 4 years, you know.
Yep.
Now, no medication or anything like that. I'd finally surrendered that all to you and just said, you know, God, it's okay. And then now I'm pregnant. And I know that is not everyone's story. I think a lot of people try to be encouraging to women, and I'm sure men too, as you're walking through infertility. A lot of people will say, just adopt. You know, as soon as
Sure.
you adopt, you'll end up having a baby. And I can promise you, as someone who heard that so many times, that really gets old hearing that, because
Yeah.
you don't know that. You're not the Lord. You don't know.
Well,
that
and
that's gonna be part of the
adoption
story.
obviously is biblical because
Yeah.
we're all grafted into the family, to
Right.
the household of faith. But there is something special and unique about having your own child.
Right.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need, to your point, we don't need to try to dismiss that and act like adoption is the same as having your own child.
Correct.
It's different, right?
Yeah. Well,
I
and
mean,
then-
there's some similarities, but it's unique. Each one is unique.
Yeah. Well, and then as a woman, you know, desiring to have that baby, there's lots of biological aspects that you
Yes.
miss out on, you know. And we all know adoption actually isn't part of God's plan, right? That's because of a broken world.
It
And
wasn't part of his original plan.
it wasn't part of his original plan, right? Because we were all made for Eden, right? Perfection.
Yeah.
And if
In the fall.
and because of the fall, that's the reason why adoption exists, because the family had to be broken up for me to adopt Mark, right?
Correct.
And that's not, you know, that's something
Yeah.
that Mark is going to have to grow up and learn about. And, you know, that's a daily thing that we need to pray about, because we want to steward his heart in the right way and answer the questions in the right timing, in the right way that his heart needs. And so, yeah, adoption just isn't a simple fix for infertility.
Yep. And so that's, folks, if you're enlightened by this conversation, that's just a glimpse into what is discussed on Hannah's Heart. And they have on experts and physicians and OBGYNs that talk very in depth on the biblical perspective of marriage and family and having children and some of the struggles there. But what we're doing this week, Ann, is talking about Bibles for Babies. So tell us a little bit about this campaign.
Well, Bibles for Babies is very special to me because last year we started it for the first time. And it was, y'all let me do this in honor of my baby boy, John Micah, who passed away in 2023. He lived for about 27 minutes after he was born. And so as his first birthday was approaching last year, what would have been his birthday, you know, of course, I mean, as you can probably imagine, you think about your baby getting to blow out their first birthday candles or open birthday gifts or, you know, making birthday breakfast.
All the memories.
All the things, that, you know, that 1 week in the hospital or a few days we were in the hospital with him, we were like living all those things out and realizing the things that we wouldn't get to experience with him. But as that time was coming up, it was like my mama heart needed and wanted to do something in honor and memory of him. And so I talked to my friend and pastor's wife, Andrea, at Parkgate, not necessarily about like, what should we do? It was just talking to her about their ministry. And she was telling me about a story, how they had given New Beginner's Bible. That's a children's Bible with beautiful illustrations. It starts in Genesis about the creation and goes, you know, to Daniel in the lion's den and Jesus's birth and all of that. But it's definitely for children. Someone had donated them a few of those Bibles, and they had given a girl one. And the girl, she received it after her positive pregnancy test there at the clinic. And she went home that night, and from what I'm told, she read that whole Bible that night to her little baby in her belly.
Mm-hmm.
And she came back the next day and said, I want to know this Jesus that this Bible's talking about. I don't know who you're talking about.
Wow.
And so after that, it was like they already knew that the spiritual needs were there and that we needed to meet them. But, as a crisis pregnancy clinic, they, have been so focused on the physical needs, which we need to do too.
Ultrasounds.
But ultrasounds and diapers and wipes and formula, things like that. All of that is needed, right?
Yeah.
But, when you have a mama coming to know the Lord, we know that now, hopefully, that baby's spiritual needs are going to be met.
Yep.
And all of that came from a simple, or what we think is simple, children's Bible.
Yeah, that story right there just amplifies the generational spiritual reach that can be had through simply sharing the Word of God.
Yeah.
Now you have, to your point, you have a mother coming to know Jesus. You have potentially the father coming to know Jesus, or a future spouse, depending on the circumstance. You've got the child being raised in a Christian home, and then the blessings that come from that are generational, multi-generational. And so it's a very simple need being met. And the scripture talks about how the Lord's word doesn't return void.
That's right.
I mean, God's going to he's going to work in the hearts of people who read his word in ways that man can't even imagine or figure out. And so that's what we're doing this week, folks. If you go over to afr.net, right there on the homepage, you'll see the Bibles for Babies campaign. You can click Learn More. $10. This is very practical, very affordable. $10, you can make an impact. If you want to, of course, give more, if you want to give 100 and do 10 Bibles, you can. But $10 will be guaranteed to provide one Bible. Once again, this is in partnership with Parkgate Pregnancy Clinic here in North Mississippi. And they're reaching all of this region. They're even reaching some of the, Memphis, which is in Tennessee, Memphis area, probably a little bit of Birmingham, Alabama. So it's a pretty broad reach that Parkgate is doing, and we've been partnering with them for many, many years. Going back over a decade. And so, Ann, I almost said Hannah, Ann, tell us a little bit more about some of the, give us some examples of some of the guests you guys have on your program, some of the topics you talk about specifically.
We have some great guests that have been on the program, but we've covered the topic, of course, infertility. We have so many of those stories, and a lot of those stories that haven't been necessarily answered the way that we think that they should be answered yet. But then we have so many stories of people coming on and sharing, their walk through infertility and loss to then now, kid after kid after kid, but we've also covered singleness, because that does affect you from being able to have children if you're trying to do it in the way that God intended. We've covered child loss, we've covered crisis pregnancy centers, adoption, we've covered failed adoptions, and so we've covered. I don't know if people know that might be listening to this program, but snowflake adoption. We have had people call in and say, I didn't even know what a snowflake adoption was, and that, for someone who might not know, that is when you adopt a frozen embryo.
Yep, produced through IVF, right?
Produced through IVF. Right now in America, we have 1 million embryos stored in the freezers around the country. That's just in America. And so we encourage anyone to give embryo adoption a look.
Let me ask you this. Why, and I know we're going a little more than what you signed up for. She's like, why does he keep asking me? I came on here to talk about Bibles for babies, and we are talking about that. You can go to afr.net, check it out right there on the homepage. But this topic is just such a need to talk about. Why is a domestic adoption, not even talking international, why is domestic adoption, number one, so expensive? Why does it take so long? Like, I just talked to a couple the other day who've been eligible. They've done all the paperwork, everything, for 2 years now. They haven't gotten a call yet. Now, I think they are looking for a newborn adoption, but still, what's going on with the adoption system?
Walker, it's a really good question, and I wish I had a better answer, because I really don't know. But it does seem, I hate to say, but very messed up, because we know that we have so many children in need. And I do understand, needing to do a home study and making sure of who these, people are that are wanting to adopt. Right. Correct.
Yeah.
But when we know how the foster system is ran rapid with children that need a home, and we're just we say the system's broken, and we cover that. I had someone on a few weeks ago who was very involved in the foster system, and that is now her passion and what she can do to help, at least for Mississippi.
I know the cost. I've always spoken out against the cost. I think it's absurd that a nation, and I'm not blaming adoption centers. I love them. We partner with them locally. They have costs. They got to pay staff, right? They've got all kind of fees to pay. But generally speaking, whether you want to do it through tax credits, I don't really care. Grants, I'm sure there's some stuff out there, but I just think it's absurd that you've got a family that's willing to take in a child forever, for the rest of their life, and love them, care for them, raise them, and then you're telling them, hey, we need $70,000, we need $50,000, and these are mostly middle to lower income families. These are not always well-to-do couples. So I think that needs to be addressed in some regard, probably at the state level, maybe not much of a federal issue, but and then the foster system, it's got its issues. But to your point earlier, this is not God's original plan for brokenness at this scale. So we are dealing with broken situations. So as humans, you're trying to do the best you can with a broken situation, and that is adoption in many cases. So, Ann, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks for letting me ramble and ask you questions I didn't tell you I was going to ask you, but that's just part of it.
I will look into that then.
Yeah, next time you'll send Kendra.
That's
Go
correct.
answer Walker's random questions that he doesn't prep me for. So that's part of the program, and I do it to every single guest. You can ask them. All right, folks, go over to afr.net. Bibles for Babies. $10 provides one Bible for a mother and a child at our local pregnancy resource center in North Mississippi, and we're doing that the rest of this week. afr.net. Check it out on the homepage. We'll be back in a few.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program. Walker Wildman here with you on this edition of The Core. You can go to our website, afr.net, check out the podcast. And we have Chris Woodward in with us today, as we do each Friday. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Well, Chris, one of your beats over at American Family News, afn.net, is the economy. That's why you and I don't hardly go a Friday without talking about it. The GDP numbers, the updated or revised GDP numbers for Q2, quarter two, came out this week, right?
Yes, and this would be a very positive number. I say that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was better than expected. Experts thought we would see somewhere in the range of around 2.93%. It actually came in at 3.3%. The bigger the number, the better the economy, the better the growth. So you want a big number. You don't want something like 2%, numbers that you saw under Presidents Obama and Biden. You want a bigger number, and certainly you want an even bigger number than what you had back in the first quarter, which is January, February, March. As the temperatures warm and people start to get out and about and they start to buy things for the new season that's in the days ahead, you want that number to be good. So it came in at a good number, and it was better than expected, which runs counter to this man is going to ruin the economy with all of his policy stuff, which we talk about on the show on a weekly basis.
Yeah. There's two caveats that I want to provide. Well, there's one caveat that I want to provide to this statement. Most economists, at least that are on the mainstream economic shows, they predicted doom and gloom as a result of President Trump's tariff strategy. All right, that's a fact. We can play clip after clip of them predicting that we're going to go into a Great Depression. Your iPhone is going to cost $5,000. They were given all these absurd numbers of how terrible it was going to be. All right, so none of that came to pass. All right, and even Jerome Powell is now admitting that tariffs have had no impact on inflation. Well, one caveat to that and possible explanation is that most of the tariffs were very temporary.
Yes.
And none of them were 100, 150%. Most of them settled at 10%, with the exception of China. They remained elevated. So there is that fact that it wasn't as drastic as President Trump initially came out the gate on. So that's probably some of the explanation. But either way, I mean, zero impact on inflation. Now, we are starting to see inflation pick back up a little bit. I don't know how long that's going to last. Some of the economists are saying it's going to get worse before it gets better. But Chris, what I've learned over the last few years is whatever the experts are saying, the opposite is probably going to come true.
Yeah.
So inflation next month is probably going to cool again and normalize, and we're not going to have a long-term inflation or stagnation problem.
Yeah. I think one thing that will certainly help Trump if inflation remains a bit of a concern is the fact that we have kind of a sound energy policy where we're going, this is what we're going to do. Because as you and I have talked about on the show, you need a sound energy policy because energy was a big driver of inflation under President Biden. And when you come out and you make statements like, we're not going to drill anymore, we're going to use unicorn juice and all these things of the future to clean the environment, that makes problems on the stock market, that makes problems for consumers, that makes problems for people that invest or have investments in various fossil fuel companies. So the fact that he is saying we're going to drill and we're going to drill in these places that we haven't drilled in a long time, if ever, that's going to help those kinds of things. And it's one of the reasons why gas prices today are cheaper than they have been going into
5 years,
the last few Labor Day weekends.
Yeah, this is the lowest. This Labor Day is set to be the lowest fuel prices since 2020.
Yes.
Was the last report I saw.
Reap those savings, America.
Yes. So 2020, remember, this is right before COVID. And so technically right after COVID, but nonetheless, lowest fuel prices in 5 years. I think they can go lower. I think AI is going to challenge that because of the energy need there.
Yes. Something I think that the administration could do, and I want to say maybe they've announced this or said that they would look into it, we need more refineries. I think if we had more refineries, not only in the U.S., but in other parts of the country, including in places like California that don't want them, it's going to help everybody.
I can tell you how we get gas under $2 again.
Okay.
And you and I have talked about this a little bit. I've talked about it extensively on my show. Nuclear.
Yeah.
So the new thing, and folks can clip this on the podcast, and then in 10 years you can come back and tell me how right I was.
Yeah.
But no, I'm kidding. The small modular nuclear reactors, like running cities, is going to be a thing. It's already being launched in Alabama for some data centers. Utah at the federal energy facilities there, they're working on it. These are like, Chris, these are reactors that are the size of a small shipping container.
Yes.
That can be dropped and deployed in a matter of weeks.
Yes.
And run entire cities. And the affordability, my point is getting back to the energy cost.
Yeah.
We could drive energy costs down so much to where investors are going to be asking themselves, how do we make money off this? Because it could be so cheap.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer idea. And certainly, you got to be careful when the government gets involved because they often find ways to screw it up. But
yes, true.
The fact that it could be done quickly really helps because it's not like a huge nuclear reactor that's the size of football fields, the things that people might envision when they hear new nuclear construction. It's smaller, cheaply installed, quickly installed, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it will help. And data centers are going to be coming, whether we want them or not, with the rise of AI and all this stuff. And it is, without a doubt, true. I mean, it's true that those things are going to require energy, and it's the energy that you and I need to power our homes and all these other things. So they have to find ways to power those things and, oh, by the way, keep the rest of us with our lights on. That is one way to do it. Some people are concerned about nuclear, and I think a lot of that is unfortunately driven by, like, action movies and dramas, Hollywood TV shows and films and whatnot. They're scared of it.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't get your knowledge of nuclear power from Hollywood, just like you shouldn't get your knowledge of dinosaurs from Jurassic Park movies.
Duly noted.
There's a lot of it that's fake, and it's meant to scare you. Nuclear power is actually something that I think we should have gone and started using a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it also pleases, or it should please, environmentalists who are concerned about emissions.
Virtually no impact on the
Right.
environment.
There's like no carbon footprint whatsoever when it comes to a nuclear reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's the way of the future. Probably the next 24 to 48 months, you're going to see the deployment of this. And over time, over the next decade, you could see it drive down energy costs substantially.
And if people have more money after paying their electric bill, they're going to go spend that money.
Yeah, in the economy.
Yes.
That's right.
It's a win-win for everybody.
Yep. So I think energy costs over the long run is going to drop down dramatically if we lean into nuclear. So that's the way of the future, and we're already seeing examples of this being deployed around the country over the next year or two. But if you have an administration like a Biden administration, Chris, that's going to set us back.
Yes.
If you have a Gavin Newsom presidency, I'm not trying to put that on us, but that's going to come in and set everybody back.
Yes, and that's the thing. It only makes the 2028 election and the 2032 election and all the midterms in between all that more important, because we cannot change energy plans every 4 years. This is the way we're going to do it. And then you get another guy and go, no, we're going to do it this way.
We got to have consistency.
Yes.
That's why we've got to have the presidency for 8 to 12 years minimum.
They will never say this publicly, but liberals benefit greatly from Donald Trump's energy policies.
100%. All the left-wing businessmen and CEOs, they love Trump.
Yeah.
That's why they're at the White House
your
every other day.
Taxes are better. Your energy's better.
The policy is consistent. It's business-friendly. Taxes are low. And the regulations are sane. It's a fact. And I think that's what brought President Trump into the White House this go-around.
Yeah.
A lot of business backing.
A lot of the reason why union members and other people that would never vote for a Republican
think, Chris,
senator.
honestly, behind the scenes, major multi-billionaires were all behind Trump.
Yeah.
I mean,
look at how many were at the inauguration.
True. David Sachs, Elon Musk, all of them, they were publicly behind Trump. But I think your Bezoses of the world, I don't know this, I'm just speculating. I think your Bezoses of the world, your JP Diamonds, not JP Diamond, Jamie Dimon, who runs JP Diamond. He needs to change his name.
I still like Dress McGillicuddy.
Jamie
It's
Dimon,
a good movie.
who runs JP Morgan Chase,
Yes.
major banking conglomerate. I think he was privately probably cheering on Trump because what Biden was doing was just unsustainable. We just can't operate with this insanity in the White House.
And Kamala's platform was a copy and paste of Biden's platform because she had to slap together a campaign in like 3 days.
It was so bad. Yeah. Chris, tell us about we talked a little, tell us about the CBO revising their predictions on the tariff revenue.
Yeah, this factors in with the U.S. economy, which again grew 3.3% in the second quarter. This other positive news for Donald Trump and his supporters, people that work for the administration, the Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, has predicted a $4 trillion reduction on the deficit in 10 years. If this happens, it will benefit everybody listening to the sound of our voice because the deficit just keeps going and going and going. Okay,
Yeah.
Lawmakers are spending willy-nilly because we are forced to pay taxes and they spend our money willy-nilly. And as a result, that's caused problems with things like the deficit. But the Congressional Budget Office, again, which is supposedly taking an impartial look at all these things, they crunched the numbers, did some math, which is beyond my line of thinking in terms of math, but they have predicted a $4 trillion reduction on the deficit in 10 years. This is huge because a lot of times deficit reductions tend to be in the billions of dollars, which sounds like a lot, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to how much our deficits are and have been.
Yes. This is a good point, Chris, because the same CBO told us that because of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, that he was going to add $4 trillion to the deficit, and they said, well, we can't include tariff revenue here in this analysis because we don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Clearly, they changed their mind here. Now they're beginning to talk about tariff revenue in a technically separate report, but it all goes together. It's all part of the same strategy. Yeah. The problem here is, can we have 10 years of the same policies? And that's the case with every single CBO prediction.
True. That's true.
Is you're assuming that Trump is running the tariff policy for 10 consecutive years.
Well, he is wearing a Trump 2028 cap.
If J.D. Vance gets in there as the president he's going to continue this same type approach.
You would think.
Which could lead to this $4 trillion deficit reduction.
You definitely think that Vance is going to carry, assuming Vance gets the torch.
A lot of potential here.
So you would assume that he's going to run on and embrace many of the same things that Donald Trump has done or is calling for, because he's going to need those people to vote for him.
I'll tell you, the Mike Pence, I wasn't giddy about. I wasn't excited about, like a Mike Pence following up a President Trump or a Vice President Pence following up a President Trump as far as terms go, term limits. I'm excited about J.D. Vance, the Vice President. I think he's got a lot of potential. He views a lot of the issues how we do, and he's youngest Vice President, I believe, at a minimum in modern American history, possibly ever. I'll have to double check that. But nonetheless, he is spot on with a lot of these issues, and he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, one of the things that I think interests a lot of people, it's similar to DeSantis. One of the reasons why people like DeSantis,
he has potential too,
is because he was in his 40s. He's got a wife. He's got kids. His parents are still with us, as far as I know. So there was a lot of things that DeSantis factors into his decision making, and a lot of people like that because finally you get somebody around about your age.
Very relatable.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing with J.D. Vance. You've got a wife, you got several kids.
He's 37 years old.
His mom's still with us. So you're taking it. What do my policies mean for my mom? What do my policies mean for my kids and their future kids? Things like that. There's nothing wrong with getting somebody Donald Trump's age in there, but there have been there are calls, especially on the left, for younger leaders, and it's similar on the right as well. They want somebody that can probably relate to their issues a little bit more than somebody that's been living in Manhattan for a long time with things like a golden toilet and all these other amenities.
That's right. J.D. Vance, to your point, or to my point, correction there, J.D. Vance turned 40 during the presidential campaign. So he was 40.
Yeah.
And then, the youngest vice president was a gentleman named John Breckinridge back in the 1850s. He was 36.
Which was old for 1850.
Duly noted. Yep, duly noted. Age expectancy has changed since then.
He lived a long life.
Yeah, that was a rough season of America. You were lucky to live to 45 as a male. But still young, 41 now, 40 to 41 now, and got a lot of potential down the road. So my point in saying all of that, talking about consistency of policies, you get J.D. Vance in there for 8 years. That's 12 consecutive years of sane policies in the White House. That's a big, big deal.
Yeah, and I still wonder, who are the Democrats going to trug out there? I think Gavin Newsom is waiting for that call.
They're not doing good, let me tell you.
Yeah.
They're still bleeding voters, you know that.
Well, to be honest with you, if the Mamdani guy wins in New York City, I guarantee you somebody with a magazine or a newspaper is going to say, look, he got elected by millions of people to run New York City. Let's give him the nomination.
I love it.
Yeah.
If Vice President Harris can't win, which clearly she can't.
Right, yes.
Then Mamdani or whatever the Minnesota
AOC.
Guy, I don't even want to try to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
No,
the other guy.
Minneapolis guy. No chance. No chance. And America has spoken, and they are still speaking loud and clear. We're not perfect. We've got our issues, trust me. But this left-wing insanity has been widely rejected by voters on more than one occasion. We'll see you next time.